Howdy folks, Justin here with Texas Recland Real Estate, and today we're going to do a follow-up on the video we made about property corners. Today we're going to discuss property lines. They kind of go hand in hand, but there's a lot of information about each topic, so I thought I'd do two videos. When we're talking about property lines, sometimes it's hard to define a line when it's very long. Of course, if you're on a small lot and you can see between the two property corners, there's no problem at all. But when you have acres and acres of land, it can be difficult sometimes to know where that line is, especially if you're going through woods or very hilly terrain. Fence lines are not always on property lines. For example, the fence behind me here, I built to keep my dog into a certain area around my house, but I own several acres beyond that fence, and this fence has nothing to do with a property line. I was showing a property last week, and the property had a fence around the front 5 acres, and there were still 5 acres beyond the fence that were owned by the landowner, but they just weren't enclosed with a fence. Also, the side fence lines weren't even built directly on the property lines, so it kind of made it difficult to know where the property actually was. A great way to know for sure is get a survey. And on that survey, usually there's going to be a heavy line that goes around the boundary of the property, and then it's going to show separate lines for fence lines, usually with X's for wire fence or 2 slashes for a wooden fence, and those are going to be the fence lines. And generally there are going to be ties given between the property line and where the fence line is built if it's not built directly on the line. Now, a lot of times fences on large properties generally follow the property line. In other words, they meander a little bit one way or the other, but on the whole, they're going to follow that property line. So there's a big difference between a fence that meanders down a property line and is maybe a tenth or two off the line or half a foot off the line versus a fence that was built 20 feet off the line. So with all that being said, we're going to take a little walk, and I'm going to show you one of my property lines, and it's fairly long, well over 1,000 feet, and this particular side of the property is not fenced, but I had my survey crew come out and set points on line, or POLs, down that line so I know where the property line is in the woods between the main corners. And I eventually plan to fence that line and use the points on line as a guide to show me where to put that fence. Then after that, I'll walk you over to a different property line of mine and show you a rock wall that was built by my neighbor, one stone at a time, and it follows the property line. And I also had my survey crew set points on line on that line, and you can kind of see how the rocks meander along that line, but generally follow the line. Okay, so we made it down to my property line, and you can see here a lath that's marking the point on line. And if we come a little bit lower down here, you can see my crew generally sets a 60D nail in the ground for the actual point on line. Then we're gonna come over here. I'm gonna zoom in. Y'all may be able to see, I'm gonna use my finger here to point right there. Oop, out of focus. Right there is a piece of flagging dangling off of a tree limb, and that's a point on line. And we'll zoom back out, and it's on line with this point. And then here is an adjoining property corner, and you can see down here there's an aluminum cap for the property corner, and it's marked by this long PVC with pink flagging. Now we're going to walk a little bit further down the line, and here's another piece of flagging dangling on a tree limb. And if we were to stand on line here and look through the trees, it would line up with that other property corner. And then if we continue down the line, we should be able to see another point on line right here. My line goes roughly 1,000 feet in that direction and roughly 1,000 feet in that direction. And you can see without these points on line being set, the woods are so thick that you would never know where you were, and there'd be no way to build a fence. Now we've hiked out to another property line, and you can see this lath is a point on line, and my neighbor has done a wonderful job, and he's built a stone wall along this section of the property line by hand over the last 20 or so years. And you can see that the wall, for the most part, follows the property line. We're going to walk down, and you can see it meander slightly here, and then that lath is another point on line. So a little bit of the rock wall is on my side, a little bit of the rock wall is on his side, but for the most part it follows the line well. And then it continues down all the way to the end of the property. Well, we're back to where we started. Sure got my steps in for today. I hope that video was helpful to you to show you how to establish boundary lines or look for boundary lines when the main pins are not visible between each other. As always, my name is Justin with Texas Recland Real Estate, and if you're looking to buy or sell land in Central Texas, give me a call, 512-704-3628. We'll see you on the next video.